and salutations, friends. My name is, of course, Charles Q. Banks, and I'd like to welcome you back to another discussion video in black and white. It's been a while since I did one of these, and so I thought, heck, might as well get back into the swing of things with this type of video. It really does help me to, we're just going to move the camera a bit here, but it really helps me to be able to do something more like a podcast, and just kind of a free-form, free-flowing, very fluid monologue, rather than a scripted event like most of my reviews are. And the only reason that I'm doing this is because recently there have been a lot of activism. There's been a lot of activism, especially on the liberal left, SJW activity, social justice warrior activity. For those who don't know the acronym SJW, it is social justice warrior, people who are trying to change things via the internet by getting really angry and yelling and making articles and making videos to trash those people who are not even just anti-LGBTQ, but people that they see as being anti-LGBTQ, anti-feminist, and just going hard, campaigning on behalf of liberal politics, on behalf of the gay and all of that community, and generally being quite annoying about it. They're not breaking any laws, but it is quite cumbersome because it's a small minority of people being represented as a vast majority, and trying to get representation as a majority and normalize this kind of behavior. And generally, the only real negative outcome that it could possibly have is perhaps if more people actually became that, then this country would be going in the direction of an Orwellian future, wherein the thought police is a thing. And a lot of the types of things that people on the liberal left tend to say sounds a lot like thought policing. It's PC culture out the wazoo. I thought that PC culture was bad in the 1990s. Well, I was so wrong. Like, it's become so much worse and so much more normal and so much not accepted, because I'd say that it's super polarized. There are people on the far right responding and being reactionary to the far left, who themselves base their SJW activism on reaction, their own biases in reacting to things that they see as negative in the culture. And it's a big ruckus. And so what am I talking about here? That's just a baseline of what's going on in the US right now, and across the world in general. A bunch of people are standing up for the LGBTQ feminist community and being generally either jerks or just annoying about it. And then the right wing coming super hard against it, and it's really filtrated into every area of the internet. Every portion of society has been affected in some way by this political polarization and this massive divide down the middle, the two-party line. You're basically either an SJW or you are a far-right Nazi. And that doesn't have to be the case, you know? And that's the issue, is that people on the right who are also seeing problems with the SJW way of doing things, this reactionary, knee-jerk activism based on emotions, are themselves becoming more and more extreme in their own reactions to it, seeing people who are defending the liberal left in any way as part of the problem. So it's like, it's becoming cyclical. One person reacts to something in a really annoying way, the other person rises up and says, wow, that was annoying, that's horrible, and then the other people are saying you're horrible for saying that that person was horrible, and then people rising to that person's defense and saying, well, you're horrible for saying that that person's horrible for saying that person is horrible, and the cycle continues. And I've seen this happening over the years for about, for as long as YouTube has been alive. I've been watching YouTube, and shows like Geeks and Gamers, which has always been very conservatively biased. I love that show. Even now, I still like watching it, but it's become so ridiculous. Like, 9 out of 10 of the videos that Geeks and Gamers comes out with is just attacking SJWs and trying to get like land back in the entertainment industry for conservatives that the LGBTQ or feminazis have taken, and it just like every video that comes out. I mean, they still do their, you know, games analysis, their reactions to movie and game trailers, and all that sort of thing. But most of the content that comes out of a lot of these entertainment so-called uh, channels are now just being dedicated to reacting to SJW culture choices. And I totally understand the idea. You know, it's like you don't want an Orwellian future. You want to take up the initiative every time one of these SJWs gets a platform. They need to have someone who is debating them on the hard-hitting issues. But when all of the entertainment editorials are just about that and not even about the entertainment that they're dedicated to, you have to ask, is this even productive? So, that being said, that I wanted to get that across, but why did I want to get that across? To establish the baseline for talking about Batwoman. Because, you know, I myself am a conservative, but I think that there's much to be said for tolerance as a conservative. No matter what side you're on, you need to be tolerant, inoffensive if possible, and always searching for the truth, even in another person's horrible way of debating. You know, what is their side? What is their motive? What is their motivation? Needing to understand everyone's side of the issue so that you can better come out with not only a better way of discussing things with them, but also come out on their side as saying, well, here is a solution that we both can benefit from, you know? Like, that seems pretty obvious that that's how everyone should react, instead of just, you know, I'm gonna kill you because you're not responding correctly to that kind of information, or that kind of a movie. The fact that that movie is made is so offensive, I'm going to write an article about it, blaming everyone and their son for the horrible culture that we have. And I'm kind of doing that myself, right? I'm reacting to the reactions of these two sides and being like, calm down, people. There are generally like 3 different sides here: the right, the left, and the middle. And while I definitely see myself as a conservative Christian, I do tend to think whenever I see either of these sides, it's like, jeepers, quit it. It's not that important. But when Batwoman came out, the trailer for the CW network television show, or, show service on the CW network, I saw that trailer and was kind of blown away at how bombastically feminist it was. And because this is 2019, we've had female leads in movies since at least the 70s, and really good, strong female leads ever since the 80s. You could even argue all the way back to the black and white silent era, we've had strong female leads, but I'm not here to debate that. It's just the fact is that the precedent for positive, strong, independent female leads has already been established decades ago, and that's not a platform or a hill to die on when making movies, like the Captain Marvel debacle. Most people who see Captain Marvel and haven't been paying attention to the whole SJW political landscape and all of the arguments and debates that have come up about Captain Marvel and all of Brie Larson's horrible, attempts at being an edgy, independent, feminazi woman. Um, People who haven't heard of all that, when they see the movie, they're just like, yeah, that was okay. I enjoyed it. Most people enjoy themselves when they go and see this movie and don't, necessarily sense that much, you know, of the ideological war that's being waged by it, supposedly. Uh, and it's very even keel. It's a very like it's there, but it's not the whole point of the movie. The point of the movie is metahuman gets amnesia and becomes a superhuman and uh, gets has to try to get those memories back, fights evil, and makes friends along the way, and comes into her own powers that she didn't know she had, right? And it's like, yeah, that's great. That's nice hero's journey, especially for a female. That's great. It's not that deep, but hey, it was an enjoyable Marvel movie, and it may be on the lower end of quality in terms of Marvel movies, but it wasn't a bad Marvel movie. That's generally what I hear people saying who are not looking at the political side of things. Of course, you hear what Brie Larson says, and you don't even want to see the movie. I have not seen Captain Marvel. I am basing my entire knowledge of it off of what I've heard, and that's the thing is like these movies are being made and being commented on by actors who are not themselves politicians, but are trying to become activists and politicians based on their own personal agendas. And it's obvious that it's negative, but when it comes down to it, the movie's just a movie. It doesn't have to be informing morality for everyone in the world. And if it does have a negative feminist tinge to it, because there's positivity to femininity, obviously, but also to um, uh, the feminist role, the feminist side of things. There is some positive feminism out there. Um, you can let that slide, you know? It's like, yeah, reference it as something that Brie Larson did. Say, if you're one of these lowbrow news columns and editorials that everything is about the gossip of who said what in Hollywood, then yeah, you're gonna get all of the news stories of what Brie Larson said and how offensive she was. But when it comes down to the movie, it's just a movie. It's just entertainment. And if you're not entertained by it, then you can say the reasons why. You can leave a review and all of that. Give the movie the number of stars that you think it deserves, and maybe even, you know, write an editorial. But you do not have to try and make enemies for the sake of the greater good based on a piece of media. Now, I know that media has a very strong influence on people, and it definitely can, but something like Captain Marvel, is that going to have a negative feminist effect on people who see it? If they watch Brie Larson and are being influenced by her, maybe. But if it's just the movie, probably not. A lot of my conservative Christian friends have seen it and are like, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I'm like, really? What's wrong with you? Are you becoming a liberal? But no, they're not. It's just that it's not that bad. And I think that a lot of these YouTube talking heads need to realize that maybe while people are interested in the topics at hand, Captain Marvel is a hot button topic now. Um, it's not that interesting to continually harp on the same thing over and over and over. Like, I remember Geeks and Gamers came out with like eight, literally eight different videos just on the horribly offensive things that Brie Larson was saying, and making it seem like, Captain Marvel was a feminazi movie, um, which apparently it isn't. But it's like, I want to see stuff about the movie itself and not about Brie Larson. I didn't subscribe to see that. Now, I still kind of like championing the conservative cause and being liking their videos and being like, yeah, you stick it to them. But at a certain point, it's like I realize I'm just feeding the fires of propaganda and, extreme reactionary activism by giving these people the time of day, by giving these news stories that are actually really old and out of touch the time of day. It doesn't matter whether you're on the right or the left. If this channel is going hard on blaming the negative way that our country is going on someone like Brie Larson or Chris Pratt or any of these pseudo controversial people, then there's something wrong going on. And the wrong that's going on is that these people are capitalizing on drama. That's all that's happening. It's not that Brie Larson is literally changing the cultural landscape of America. She's just a symptom of a certain minority of people that are especially loud. And, she might have done a fine job in the movie. I don't know. But that's the point, is how did she do in the movie? Not, is what political party was she affiliated with when she, played and starred in the movie. So anyway, so Batwoman. So Batwoman comes out after Captain Marvel, after all this happened, and I watched the trailer, and it's extremely, extremely feminist, extremely, extremely LGBTQ, but also in a way that's extremely offensive to men. Just, like, straight up saying from Batwoman's lips herself, she doesn't want a man to take credit for a woman's job. And she's talking about Batman taking credit for what she's doing in Batman's suit. That's messed up, okay? It's like she wants that credit, and she wants to use all of the stuff that he's worked hard to attain. And apparently she's having no problem becoming Batwoman. So there might be a Mary Sue thing going on. All of this just from the stinking trailer. If the trailer is that blatant, then there's... that the show is actually going to be much worse. And that's why people are incensed with Batwoman today. But the same thing is happening with Batwoman that happened with Brie Larson and Captain Marvel. And I know that Batwoman is going to be on my YouTube feed for months and months on end. Basically until the show gets into its middle episodes and people start losing interest. It's probably going to bomb pretty badly, but it's just one more in a pretty long list of mediocre superhero shows. And a lot of them are good, but I would say a lot of them are also mediocre. Like, there's this just influx of superhero stuff in entertainment these days, and it's going to have a negative effect eventually. I mean, the political landscape affecting entertainment so much is already having a negative effect, and it's just complicating things to no end. So, I wanted to say about Batwoman that, when I saw that they were coming out with a show, I was like, ooh, I like Batman. I like the Batman family. Or the Bat family, if you want to be technical about it. I've read a bunch of Batman comics. Um, I'll check this trailer out. And I was amazed. I was quite shocked at its obviously political and pretty offensive, jibing tone. Its mocking tone toward men and its LGBT agenda. At least its L agenda. Um, and so I was quite taken aback by that, and it's so offensive, so in your face, that it just shows a lack of tact on the creators of the show. Like, they don't know what they're doing. Maybe all of the show actually has some of that stuff sprinkled throughout it, but to have so much of that offensive um, animosity towards a whole, you know, people group, basically, of men, uh, shows just how far gone the creators of the show already are. Um, but the thing about that is that, like, I had this idea that Batwoman wasn't that. That Batwoman was her own superhero, that she didn't get a whole lot of stuff from Batman, and that she wasn't really a lesbian. And if she was, it's kind of like, in certain Batman cartoons, there are certain characters who are implied to have relations with the same gender, and it's like, yeah, there was some edge to the Batman universe, and that's really all it was. It was just kind of like, you know, Ivy and Harley Quinn. They go off when the Joker is being mean to Harley Quinn by themselves for a super long time and become their own dynamic duo of crime. And it's like, that was just kind of an implication of the story, that these two are finding comfort in each other's arms, in a way. And it's like, okay, yeah, they're both villains, and from a conservative standpoint, it's like, that's pretty darn edgy, but at least they're still villains, right? But anyway, so that's what I thought about Batwoman. That it was a just a poor reflection and a ramping up of the feminism and the lesbianism in Batwoman. Well, I looked up the comics to see if this was actually the case, and I was wrong. It's all there in the comic in the first place. Maybe she's not as offensive in the taking of Batman's things. She's actually a bit more humble about it. But it is definitely the LGBTQ agenda being thrust forward in the original 2006 Batwoman comic book. The first issue has women snogging, and it's just in your face almost just as much. And so when people are being so reactionary, on the right at least, to Batwoman, which I think, is perfectly reasonable from my point of view, you have to wonder, like, okay, are you just totally, like, Christian conservative? But the answer is no. A lot of these people are just secular and maybe centrists, some of them right wing, but a lot of them just have the same kind of sentiment that I do, that this stuff is just offensive anyway. It's abnormal for a person to be a lesbian. It's not a normal thing. And when they see the Batwoman trailer, they just attribute the LGBTQ feminist agenda to the TV makers, the makers of the show. Whereas the origination of the Batwoman character from 2006 is LGBT propaganda. And that point, I think, really needs to be stressed. I think people didn't know that. Either they didn't know that, or they thought it was going to be a lot more inferred than in your face. But if you knew about Batwoman in the original issues, then how are you having such a negative reaction on it? Like, you should have seen this coming. Of course, if they're going to make a Batman show, Batwoman show based on the 2006 version of Kathleen or Kathy Kennedy, is that it? No. Anyway, on the 2006 version of Batwoman, because there is a really much older version of Batwoman in all gold and purple. But anyway, that's not the version that Batwoman, the TV series, is going for. It's the 2006 version. You should have known that Hollywood, in general, would take this character, who is already a sort of lesbian feminist icon, and drum it up like crazy. Make it a hugely political and politicized show, because to a certain extent it already was political in the comics. So, really, unless you have a moral stance against lesbianism or a moral stance against feminism, you don't really have too much of a platform to be super negative about the show. And that's my take on it, is that, like, I think that this type of show should be allowed, of course, to be made, and that, people need to be heard, even if they're the eccentrics, even if they're the strange ones, and they need to find a place in society, and we need to figure out how to tolerate them, how to be nice to them, how not to judge them harshly, and integrate them in a way that is positive, right? And not have this kind of back and forth of battling between quote unquote normal people and the LGBTQ community. Like, anyway, so yeah. Now, the other problem with the Batwoman trailer, which I totally agree with all of the detractors of the trailer, is that she is poorly written as a heroine. There was a certain video, I think his name was Heel versus Babyface. That's an interesting name for a channel, but he is definitely one of these kind of pulpy YouTube creators that just takes a bunch of news stories and talks about them as quickly as possible with a hot take. And I actually enjoy this kind of content, especially if I know that that's what the purpose is. It's very kind of yellow journalism in a way, but I do enjoy listening to it and hearing all the different types of responses, different types of arguments made. And he made an argument that despite the lesbianism, despite the feminism, she is the Batwoman in the trailer was being portrayed as a villain just by dint of the writing. And, he was trying to pass it off as like, this might be, this is obviously accidental, but it might be an actual truth that this is how you write villains. And I totally agreed with that point of view. It's a pretty good theory. Like, she is shown to be super arrogant, super powerful, and super into herself. That's arrogance, again. But basically narcissistic. Taking other people's things, not caring about Lucius and his ideas, steamrolling everyone else for her own goals, and apparently the entire reason that she's becoming Batwoman is to save her lover from a supervillain. Like, that's her first priority as Batwoman. And apparently she does this, and that's when she comes into her own. She takes the bat suit for herself, forces Lucius to recreate it into something of her own, and she becomes Batwoman. And in a way, just the way that she's shown in every shot and in every scene is just so like aggressive and like sexually charged and just villainous, basically. If you took any other character and gave them this backstory, you could take this person on a villainous arc just super easy. That's a good way to start a villain, and that was in his entire point. And that's the problem: is this writing is is really bad, and I agree with that. Making her out to be someone who doesn't care about Batman and using his stuff anyway, like that's just villainous and just being a jerk. Like, give some credit where credit is due. Really, it's appalling how careless this version of Batwoman seems to be. Also, the idea of casting seems to be a little off. She's basically a beanpole, and I know that she looks very similar to the Batwoman of the comics, which I say that's great, but you do need at least a little bit of muscle if you're going to be literally throwing giant men around, muscle-bound thugs over your shoulders, which she does in the show, and it's just kind of a trope, really. It's like you want your your strong female lead to be able to beat up all the guys, despite the fact that there's not a whole lot of visual indication that this person is actually strong. And that's happening also now with the next Terminator movie, and that's a whole other bag of worms, can of worms. Like, I don't have that much of a problem with Terminator, the next Terminator movie. Just that it's another Terminator movie. Like, did we need this? But Hollywood is going to milk it for all it's worth, and maybe it has some cool explosions. And same type of thing going on. The casting is weird, especially for the new Terminator woman. It's kind of a Terminator 2 thing. Come with me if you want to live. But now she's a woman, and, I think she looks great. I think she's a good-looking human being, from my perspective. But is that really what you want out of a Terminator? You want someone who is menacing, someone who seems strong and powerful. And there are powerful women out there. Like, why did you pick this tall, thin woman? I know the point is she's a robot underneath, but the whole point of Arnold Schwarzenegger being the first Terminator was that he looks intimidating and he's a freaking bodybuilder. He's huge in that movie, the original Terminator movie. So, like, why don't you just get a muscle-bound woman, an actual weightlifter woman, to play the next Terminator? That would make perfect sense. But no, it's this very thin little woman. I mean, she is tall, but you get the point. And I think that's as far as that needs to be taken. No offense to the movie makers or to the woman herself, as long as they act well and do their due diligence to make the movie as quality as they can, then that's all you can really ask for. I don't think there's a huge problem with the cast being mostly feminine. It's just, how is the movie made? If the whole point of the movie is to have a mostly feminine cast in the main roles, then that's kind of a bad motivation for making a freaking Terminator movie. But I know that's probably going to be part of the justification, is that we wanted more women, but in a Terminator movie. Which, I don't know why you would need that, because the first Terminator movie was an excellent example of a movie that has a strong, independent, well, at least a strong female character, and she becomes independent near the end. So it's a great arc for that character. She's a waitress, gets picked on all the time, maybe even taken advantage of, and she becomes more strong throughout the movie, and it's a great character arc. I love that movie. I love the Terminator movie. Now that I finally saw it last year. But so yeah, there's no reason to try and make feminism the flag that you, or the banner that you bring into this next movie. But if it turns out to be a good movie with an all-male or with an all-female cast or something like that, even if it were an all-female cast and it were a good movie, that would be great. But quality is what is the thing here. That's the key to any movie, is whether the effort was put into it. It doesn't matter how many women or how many men are in it, or what minorities are represented and what aren't. That shouldn't have any bearing on the judging or the valuing of a movie. And it shouldn't have any bearing on the devaluing of the movie. Like, people are looking at Terminator Salvation and saying, oh, it's gonna be such a horrible feminazi SJW parade that it's just gonna be horrible already. There's one trailer out, people. Okay, so that's my whole point. In every one of these issues, Captain Marvel, Batwoman, and now the next Terminator movie, people are taking these things to insane extremes and completely illogical extremes. They have a reason for doing so, because they've seen all these negative things done in the past, but even if they are negatively influenced and cause, or are, feminazi SJW material, then it's not your type of thing, guys. It's not. And I'm not talking about men. I'm saying anyone who doesn't agree with the politics, male, female, black, white, whatever. You don't have to try and lynch the creators just because they are SJWs, right? And vice versa. You don't have to attack the conservative person because they said something against the SJW agenda. It's very reactionary, and we all do this, right? We are all reactionary creatures. I myself am one. I kind of rebel against the popular way of doing things. I know there's a proper way to get ahead on YouTube, but because it's the popular way, I don't want to do it. I just want to make raw vlogs, and that be it. But we'll see if that works. You know, I'm pretty skeptical of that myself. But I hope people have understood this, and I hope this doesn't get me canned on YouTube, because I know YouTube itself tends to be pretty SJW influenced. But my point is not just to attack SJWs, it's to be cautious, it's to be introspective when you start to have a knee-jerk reaction to a piece of media that you think might be politically motivated. Just basically to chill out, I guess. Politics doesn't need to be such a hot-button issue. I mean, it's really important people get really hot under the collar about it, but politics in entertainment is, like, it doesn't belong, for one, but also if it does happen, it's been happening for about a century now, and it's not that crazy of a thing. So, make of that what you will. God bless you. Thanks for watching. And until next time, farewell.